All right, there we go. Got comments back. So give it a little bit just to get everyone kind of in here. Got one in here now. Sorry for that mistake. I just had the wrong setting on. So now we have comments. We can get things rolling. Let me know if everything's working well if you can. And we'll get this going here in the next 5 minutes. This show is going to be a little shorter than usual. I'm stacked up with a couple rebuilds today that are due by the end of the day. So going to have to go through a couple things and then do a couple questions. And we'll go from there. But we're going to go through the settings on the M17. The M17 is a very quick response, like it's a very responsive radio, and sometimes it could feel a little too responsive, and that could create issues just by making it too hard to drive. And you could actually be driving a lot better, but since it's so reactive, it's making it too hard. So there's a couple settings that I like to change in here. What's up, Evan? How's it going? How's it going down there in New Zealand? But the main settings that I want to go over are going to be, well, actually, we'll just start with the bases just to do a quick overall setup on your radio. Again, this might be a little more difficult because we're not really cutting out to things. But I have to do this backwards. And there's light again. Yeah, I need to get this dialed in better. All right. Now I got to do this through the computer. Oh, this is going to be tricky. All right. So basically, we're going to start with the custom menu. I haven't touched mine. Mine's stock, pretty much how it comes. But your dual rate is something that you want to change on the fly. It's not really a setting that you set your car up with. The dual rate is more of an option, like a quick option. If you're on this track right now and you need to pretty much remove steering from the car really fast. It's not really a good setting to just keep, like, it's not like a setup change you want to run. But if you need to do a Band-Aid fix real quick and you have no time, turning down the dual rate on your steering can be actually pretty helpful. A time that you would want to change the dual rate on your car at that moment would be, say you threw your car down, you made some changes, and now it has too much steering. It's kind of corkscrewing into itself. You'll want to just turn it down. I would say maybe like start at 5%, just kind of get it to where it's still going to have like that really twitchy kind of feel, but it's going to limit the throw of it. So it's going to make it a little bit easier to drive until you can fix it for your next heat. So that would be what I would do with dual rate. Sub trim, I mean, we all know what that is. It's pretty one of the basic ones. It comes on every single radio, I'm pretty sure at this point. Basically, it just makes the car track straight. And then we go into your EPA left and right. So when you adjust your EPAs, there's a lot of ways to do it, but the main goal is to get the max amount of steering without overthrowing your servo or your steering rack or anything like that. In most cars, I'm going to use this car. It's not really, we'll use this car. So in most cars, your steering block and your caster block are going to have flat spots that'll meet at full lock. So basically, the way I've set mine up and always set mine up is as soon as that caster block and the steering block touch each other, pull it maybe 2 or 3 more percent so it holds tension on it. Basically, if you have it just allowed it to where it touches, when you give it full steering, it's gonna wiggle, and you're gonna lose, I don't know, maybe 5 to 10 degrees of steering, just because it's not holding it tight to the steering block or to the caster block. Because with the centrifugal of the wheel wanting to move forward, it's gonna want to straighten out. It's never gonna want to keep the corner. So you always want to put a little bit of tension on your steering block to make sure that it is holding all the way up against the caster block when you need to use full steering. And then you do that to the other side. You do that to both sides. Lorenzo, yep, got it all working. I had the wrong settings on there, but got it all sorted out. Moving on, servo reversing, same idea. If it turns left, if you turn left and the car turns right, just hit that switch and it'll turn it back. Yeah, that's pretty much the basic, another basic one like the sub trim. Now, if you go into your throttle side, for electric cars, you're never really going to use the throttle trim. The throttle trim in electric is you set your speed control, and as long as your throttle trim is zeroed out, you shouldn't have to change it. It's just going to be the same. If you ever bump it, just make sure it goes back to zero, because that's where generally your speed control should be calibrated to the 0 mark. As far as high and low, actually, we'll go back to that sub trim. On Nitro cars, what I like to do is set up my servo horn so that it's square. Obviously, my car's not going to be on, but I put my servo horn on as close as I can, and then I try to get the servo horn to be as straight as possible. I want it to be square here, and then these are your throttle linkage square and your brake linkage square. Just eliminates the chances of binding or a false feeling. The more square you can have stuff, the better it's going to be. So most servos, they're not going to be perfect. As soon as you put the servo horn on, it's going to be click to the left or click to the right. It's never going to be perfect. So you use sub trim to make that square and then adjust your linkage after that. My question to adjust the brakes on the fly, to use the brake dual rate tab, or does this affect any other endpoint? I'll get on that here soon. We're just going to go through the throttle as we go. So next one, we're going to go and we do the sub trim this for the e-car and a sub trim for the throttle. So now your EPAs, let's go electric car first. Generally, throttle high or your EPA high is going to be at 100. Most of the time, you're going to want all the power. If it is too fast, or this could even work for the brakes, like Evan's asking. If you're using it, if you're using the high and the car's too fast, just turn it down a couple percent. Maybe I've ran on more slippery conditions for two-wheel drive buggy. I've turned my motor down to like 95%. It just kind of takes that like ballistic top end off the top if it's not needed, and it makes it a little bit easier to drive. As far as Nitro goes, you basically have to set it. You're just setting it up to the carburetor. So you don't want to overthrow the carburetor. So you want the slide to just pull all the way open, and then that's it. You don't want it to keep going because it could wreck your carburetor. You won't necessarily break your servo. I think the servos these days are going to be able to overpower a carburetor. So just when you set your carburetor, take the air filter off, and then as you're hitting the EPA button, just watch it open. And as soon as it gets to where it's completely wide open, just go ahead and stop right there. If you want to be safe, you don't really have to. You can go back one, but the easiest way to know that you're going to be fine is hold the trigger wide open with the car off, obviously, and then pull on the linkage. So we'll go back to this car. I should probably just leave this car off. So if this is wide open is right here, then you should be able to pull this back a little bit. You want to have that play in there so that you know that you're not overthrowing your servo. Just go ahead and leave this body out here. Now going on to the brakes, same idea. The best way to set your brakes is going to be, we'll go start with electric. We're going to do the electric first. I'm just kind of a little brain farted out. With electric, I always I feel that I like my brakes to be pretty soft because I mean I have a pretty good throttle finger, but I don't really have a good brake finger. Like I'm all or nothing. So I set my brakes up to feel like they're just enough to slow the car down, but never lock the wheels up. So basically, if I slam the brakes, the car is going to just roll to a nice stop. And what I don't like, I'll usually always set my brakes on an electric car to start 85% on the radio using the EPA. And then in the speed control, usually somewhere between 85 to 80%, 80 to 85% on the brakes, and this are the brake settings in the ESC. And then on top of that, just doing a quick ESC settings with ROM brakes. I also like to run around 1.5 to 2K. I feel like it has the best overall feel for the brakes when they're that soft. So that's a good spot to set there. And that's in the Hobby Wing speed control, the XR10 and then the XR8 Pro. Now if you do have, like what Evan's asking, if you do have too much brake in the middle of a race or before a race starts, this one you could probably just use the EPA. I don't really think you need to get into the dual rates for this, for the throttle. You can do either one really. There's a couple trim buttons on the M17 that you can adjust the brakes. That's how I usually do it. So if you go to the back, and that it's actually the brake on the front screen is actually going to adjust your dual rate. But I just use, let's see, it's actually the trigger down here at the bottom. And if you would click it, you get your brakes on the go. So the reason mine's above 100 right now is because the speed control brakes, actually, what do I have on this? This is my 8X. I set the brake to lift it up a little bit mid-race the last time around. So that's why we're it so high. But generally, if you have your brakes set up before the race and everything's good, shouldn't have to make these changes. So before I go out and race the next one, I'll go through my brakes again, make sure that put this back at 100, and then adjust my EPA to make sure that everything is dialed in. And that button is down here right next to where you would put your thumb. So really, if you're driving, you can even click it with your thumb. So let me get this screen on here. Clear that. So you can click it with your thumb, really. But that's how I would adjust the brakes. And I think it's the easiest way. Instead of having to go into the screens, you can just change it on the front screen. But if you did want to change it with your EPA, it really doesn't. It'll still do the exact same thing. The steering one is a little bit different because it's controlling two directions at the same time. So instead of having to, like, if you were going to turn your steering down, instead of going to EPA and going, okay, I need to go down 10% on the left and then go over do down 10% on the right, you can just turn the dual rate down. It does 10% together. But since your throttle and brake, you're only going to adjust one or the other. You don't really need to use the dual rate or worry about using the EPA. You can pretty much use either one, and it'll do the same thing. Steering is the only one you want to use dual rate to adjust on the fly, though. Okay, so now we'll go past all that. Those are all the basic settings just to get your car rolling. So that was in the custom menu. And then going to settings is going to give you more detailed, let's see, more detail in what you can change. So we'll start, since we've already covered the dual rate, we'll go on to speed. So if you look at my radio settings, probably backwards or upside down. No, that's just backwards. So basically my settings, I run negative 35. The reason I do that is most servos these days are super fast. And it's hard to really explain. You have to have a real good feel for it. But if your servo's too quick on an off-road car, it could break traction because it's not a flowing move left to right. It's snappy. So every time you snap the wheel left or snap the wheel right, the car breaks traction. It'll push a little. So it could be that half a second or of a second, 2/10 of a second difference as you enter a corner and then exit a corner. So with a smoother steering, you go into the corner, the car bites, the tires never lose grip. They're always pulling through the corner. With a faster receiver or a faster servo and in speed, if you snap the wheels, there's going to be a split second where the wheels lose grip and then catch. So the car will, I mean, it's very minute, but all of these things add up over time. And that's where you see like these guys that are going really fast are really cutting down tenths of a second. The wheels will snap across, just push for a slight second, and then that'll be the difference between holding a tighter line versus maybe being another foot off the pipe. So slowing the speed down is a really good tool. You don't want to make it too slow. You can make it, the M17 allows you to make it really slow to where it doesn't even really work. Like you can turn it, let go of the wheel, and it's still turning, and then it'll eventually come back. So you don't really need to do that, but I would say between -15 and -35 is where you want to be. It all depends on the servo that you're using. If you're using really high speed servos, you can go a little higher. If you're using more torquey servos, you don't have to go nearly as high because they're not really set to be as fast. Let's see, going to the next one. This is all steering stuff. So curve, your exponentials, I don't really think that's really useful anymore. If anything, it kind of gives it it'll give it like a number initial feel. So if you, let's say like you have a bit more of like a shaky hand, I've seen people use this for my buddy Jay. His hand shakes really bad. So if you continue to like do that while you're driving, the wheels on your car are gonna do the same thing. So he has his expos turned really far down, so where when he's shaking that maybe 5 degrees left to right each way, the wheels in the car don't actually do that to follow. They kind of have there's more of a neutral range basically. So to get his car to turn, you have to be cranking the wheel in order to get it in the corner. So I don't really think that's the right way to set it up. I think using your speed and then something we're going to go over in a little bit is going to be the way to really adjust your steering feel. But if you do have a shaky hand or you get nervous or something like that, maybe it is something you might want to try. Moving on to the next one, your fail-safe. I mean, that's just, I don't know why they have it for the steering only. It's kind of a weird setting. I would just set my fail-safe when I bind. So no matter what, all the servos go to center. Or I guess if you wanted to, you might be able to set your steering to like lock right. So instead of it taking off in a straight line and just going wherever it wants, it could just go around in a circle. So I mean that could be something. But I just always set my stuff to go to neutral. If the throttle goes to neutral, you don't have to worry about the steering. Going to the base. Base is just base. Is your EPAs again, your sub trimming, your reversing. It's all on one little screen. So we've already gone over that. Trim. I haven't really used this setting. I don't know if it's more so just. Let's see. Yeah, I'm not quite sure. I haven't used that one yet. I'll have to go back and check that out. But I mean, it's just basically, it looks like, yeah, I'll have to go back and look and see what that is. But I don't think it's going to be something huge as much as the next one that we're going to talk about, which is the feeling. So the M17, when it comes out of the box, the response feeling is what they say at 7S. That's the highest you could be set at. So the response time is extremely quick. So it almost feels like as soon as you're thinking about turning, it's already turning. That's how fast it feels. But in most cases, you don't want that to happen because it makes it feel super twitchy. It's super hard to control for a long period of time. In off-road, it can make the car feel. I've done this before. My 2-wheel drive buggy actually is where I decided to use this the most, because as I was driving it, like no matter what setup change I made, it was super snappy. Like it felt like it was making moves before I could even plan to do them. So I looked it up. I talked to some people, and some people asked what the feeling setting was on the radio, and I don't know. It's just the stock one, and like again, it comes at 7, which would be the fastest. Is their 7S, but if you turn it down, it almost has like a delayed feel. Not like it's gonna be delayed to where you're gonna turn and then it's gonna wait and then turn, but it feels more connected to the radio when you go down to the 1, 2, 3S level. I personally run indoors, I run 2S, and then outdoors, I run 1S. And it just makes the steering feel way more connected to the car. It feels like you're doing the inputs and the car is responding to them rather than you think you're doing the inputs and the car's already doing it for you. That's the best way I could describe it. But it's basically how fast the receiver responds to the radio. And honestly, if you drop that down a little bit, it'll smooth everything out. It's been a huge change. Like it makes your car feel like I said, broken to where it feels good without changing anything else on the car. And I've had a couple people try this themselves, and this is like one of the biggest things that they've noticed. So I would really highly recommend, if you have an M17 and you feel like the radio doesn't feel connected or it feels too twitchy, check this setting out and just go extreme. Try it down 1S, and you'll see a big difference. You'll see a big difference in how the car reacts. So moving on to the throttle, you can basically do all the same settings from the steering to the throttle. So we'll just kind of run through it real quick. Your dual rate, your throttle speed. I was talking to Barry Baker about this one. If you really think about it, your servos move faster than fuel can run through your carburetor. And this is a nitro car, obviously. So if you have a servo that's lightning quick, it's going to create it could potentially create a surge in fuel. So the slide opens faster and lets more air in, then the fuel can come through the tube. So what I like to do now is on the speed for the throttle, I use the forward setting. Oops. I use the forward setting at 20, so it slows how fast it pulls, but then I leave it at 0 so it goes back quick. You could probably do the same speed both front to forward and return, but I feel like you still want to have that closed carburetor, so you don't want to have like a hanging on. So I think closing it quickly is going to be the best. I don't think it'll necessarily hang on, but I don't really want to find out. So -20 on the forward and then 0 on the return for the speed is what I currently have in my nitro buggy. Throttle curve, again, same idea for shaky hands. That's kind of the only time I would use exponential is when you have to shake your hand, because there's always other settings. Fail safe, same idea. I would just set it through the radio when you're binding it so that everything goes to 0, or actually a better option would probably be to have everything go to full brake, or have your throttle go to full brake, which can be set through the binding process of the radio. Going to the base, it's throttle EPA, brakes, EPA, your sub trim, and your reversing. Trim again. I don't know why there's an extra page for it, but I'll look into that and then kind of see what I can find on it. Feeling, same idea. So it's all about the response. And throttle, you can kind of get away with a faster response, but again, so it goes back to the speed, where if your slide open faster than fuel can go into the engine, then there's really no point for it. So Again, I have my feeling down at 3S. I don't have it all the way down at 1. I want it to be somewhat quick, but not too. I want it to be have like a little bit more speed than the steering. So that's why I leave it at 3. Down to throttle type 70-30. I mean, it's kind of just trigger position really. Instead of doing it on the trigger, you can do it in the radio. So if you want 70 throttle, 30 brake, you can do that. Or you can change it to, I believe, 50-50. Yeah. So it'd be 50-50. 50% throttle, 50% brake. I run it at 70-30, mainly because it's how I've always ran it. I haven't really changed. I haven't really gone back to 50-50 at all. Anti-lock brakes. It's more like something where you can pulse the brakes. I've worked with this a little bit. Sometimes I notice a difference. Sometimes I don't like it. I've ran it more so in electric cars. But basically, when you push the trigger, to brake, it pulses the brakes rather than actually locks them up. So realistically, you could run a really strong brake and run the anti-lock brake setup on there, and it'll brake but let it roll and kind of keep traction. I think there is something to this. I think it could be actually a really good setting. Maybe even a Nitro. Maybe I'll experiment with this weekend. But I haven't really ran it too much, but it's something that I have looked into in the past in electric cars. But I always go back and forth. Like, do I like the brake feel? Do I not? So it's something to experiment with. But if you do that, you'll want to run a harder brake setup because it's going to, and you can change the delay, the lag, the cycle. You can pretty much change everything about it. So I don't know. I think there's something that it could be there, and it'll allow you to run better brakes. You might get a better feel for braking. It might not be as what's the word I'm looking for? Might not be as much like a light switch. It'll have a little bit more feel. So that might be something to work with. I would try it. I'm going to try it myself. We can even go back on Monday Tuesday, and we can go over it again for a little bit and see what I found, what you guys found. But yeah, it's something to work on. Offset. I don't really ever use this one either. I don't really know what it's for. Okay, let's go back. Auxiliary stuff. I don't really use that myself, but I know crawlers and maybe some fifth scales might use the auxiliary parts or the auxiliary buttons. Servo mixing, haven't really used that much either. One thing I do want to kind of get into is, get more into in the future is the telemetry setups. I think there could be some cool data you can get from it, especially with all the new stuff that's coming out. I think there's like a data logger that's being worked on. I think that would be actually something pretty cool to work with and see how that all works out. But if you guys have any questions, I'll open it up. Pretty much just getting a couple builds done today. Pretty stacked up at the moment. And then we're going racing. We're going to go do the Toys for Tots at Thunder Alley. Myself and a few of the WB team. Caitlin's going to be joining us this weekend. She finally has an off weekend where she doesn't have to work. And my buddy Keith is going to be there. Maybe Meyerson. I don't know if I told him about it yet, but I'll mention it to him today. So he hasn't raced since Hot Rod, so that'd be cool to get him back out there. But yeah, if you guys have any questions, let me know. I'll be on here for a little bit longer, but I can't stay too long because I got to get a lot of stuff done before 5 o'clock today. But yeah, if you guys have any questions, let me know. Sounds good, Evan. Cheers to you too. Hope I answered your question. If I didn't, if you have another one, let me know. Open up to whatever you guys want right now. What do you notice different from the TLR to the JQ? The biggest thing that I notice is that, I mean, not really trying to be a dick about it, but the JQ car goes together horrible. I don't think I've used a Dremel on a car so much to get everything to fit right and do all that. But yeah, as far as driving, I'd say the JQ was really, really good. It was super stable. It was very easy to drive in the rough tracks. I felt like it lacked a little bit of steering feel, but I mean, that car had a lot of play in the steering rack after the first run. So I would chalk it up to that, no matter how tight or anything you got that. But I think that's also what helped the car um, go through all the bumps a little better. The TLR car, it's got a lot of it kind of lacks a little bit of rear grip, so it's a little unstable at times. But with a lot of the changes that we've made to it and working closely with the guys, it's actually worked out pretty well. Steering feels really good. The grip, we've got a lot of grip in the car now, and it's actually pretty easy to drive. So I'd say they both have their good points and their bad points, but I think the low C obviously is going to be a little bit better, just because it doesn't slop out as much and it just feels like an overall more solid car, and there's a little bit more support for it. So that's also a big plus as well as far as that goes. Who paints your bodies, or do you paint them myself? So my painter is actually north or a little farther up north in Moore Park. He does a lot of the paint for all of my cars. I don't know where my body's at right now. So he does this one. So this is a full painted body here. Kind of out, but the painting business is Off the Grid Designs. Yeah, he does awesome work, pretty quick, and relatively not expensive for painting. Super nice guy. He's been painting my stuff for the last 2 or 3 years now, and yeah, the guy's just awesome. As of late, I wanted to come up with an idea for our signature series builds to where we're not just sending cars home with one color jobs, but having an actual painter to do all these bodies and get them done within time limit has been a challenge, because I mean, painters work on their own schedules. They don't really, I mean, and most painters have day jobs, so they don't really have time to paint and do it as a first source of income. So I got with my new graphics guy, Vista Design, and we basically came up with this, which is a wrap. It's a full wrap here, kind of like how Upgrade used to do it back in the day. So all you do is you just paint it all one color, and you put the stickers on the outside. And I mean, this one's custom for me to match my existing paint scheme. But we put all the logos are all in it. So all you do, you just paint the car one color, put all the stickers on, and it's done. You don't have to put the graphics on, then your stickers over it. Everything's printed into it. It's super simple. I thought I was going to make the car a little bit heavier, or the body a little bit heavier, and it does. But since you're only doing a one color scheme, you can paint it pretty light, and most of the body's covered with a sticker. So really, it's only, I mean, you could probably get, I mean, I laid in one pretty heavy with my e-buggy body, and that one was 10 grams heavier than a full custom painted body with stickers. So, I mean, with the lightweight bodies now, I think they could use a little bit more heavy to keep them together. But yeah, I didn't really notice it on the track. And running on a high grip surface, I think that would be where it would be the worst for the heavier body, but didn't really notice much. So we're going to work on some 10 scale stuff, I think, later. So that way we can kind of offer it all the way through. And the best part is like you could be at a race. You could just bring a couple of graphic sheets, have a new body for your main if you wanted to. Or if you wanted a night scheme, you just paint it white and put the stickers on. So I think running the decals gives a little more versatility and kind of a little bit more option. Do you have any info of one of the new Mugen buggies coming out? No, I don't really have too much on Mugen stuff. But if I was to take a guess, I'd say there's gonna be a couple new cars out early to like in the first quarter of next year is what I would say. I think it's about time for a lot of cars to upgrade. Been a lot of cars that have been out for a while, so I would imagine at least 2 or 3 companies should be coming out with fresh stuff. But again, that's just speculation. I don't know anything about that since I don't really have any links to the companies anymore, aside from just being a dealer. Thanks for the honest reply. Yep, no problem. Hey, I ordered the Lunsford post and caps, and I asked them about I ordered the Lunsford posts and caps that I asked you about on Instagram. Does Apex RC normally take 5 weeks to get you a shipping confirmation? Hey, Jacob. Not super sure on what you're asking about, but if you have any questions, you can DM me, or I'm not sure about Apex. I don't really order from them, so that I'm not sure. Lunsford posted caps. Lorenzo, is it better to have an expensive transmitter or receiver? Expensive transmitter or receiver if you can only choose one, or can you not do that? Well, for the most part, like if you're gonna spend the money to get the expensive radio, it's gonna come with an expensive it's gonna go in with a higher quality receiver. But if you have for Sanwa, for instance, how far back can you go? Some radios, the M17 can only go back so far as some receivers. So this one only allows you to go back. So it does go back to FH3. So you can run an FH3 receiver, which is a few years back, and they're pretty cheap now. But what's going to happen when you go backwards with receivers is you're going to lose the radio's abilities. So obviously the newer technology is going to be faster. It's going to feel more connected. And again, we also turn it down, but to have that ability, you have to have the matched receiver to it. Otherwise, you'll have like a latency response, like a response pretty far back, and it won't be nearly good as like what 1S would be. So it'll run slower. It's possible to run it, but it's not really recommended. I would just kind of stick with the receiver that comes with the radio, or maybe one back. Like I run FH4 receivers a lot, mainly because I just had a bunch of them from my old M12S. So yeah, I would stick. Like if you had an M17, I'd stick with the FH5 and the FH4. So, but is the option? I mean, if you're gonna go expensive or with one or the other, I would just go in the middle and get a mid-grade radio, because the mid-grade stuff is usually on par with the responsiveness of the high-end radios, but they just lack a little bit of the settings. So I would probably do something like that rather than trying to get a high-end radio and a low-grade receiver. Just meet in the middle. That's probably your best bet if you don't want to go with the full high-quality radio system. How much the wraps costs? We haven't decided on that yet. We're working on that. It'll probably be released. The solid information and the pricing will probably be released early January. But I don't think it'll be too expensive. I think it'll be pretty reasonable as far as I mean, comparing to how Upgrade was like back in the day. What do you think about the glue tracks wave? Honestly, like I don't really have any. I don't really hate. I don't really like or dislike any a surface better than the other. I think they all present different challenges and different types of fun. But I mean, the glue tracks, the consistency is great. It makes it pretty easy to keep your car kind of set up, but it does take away the fun of like a rough track. Like a rough track really shows who can drive and who can just pull a trigger. So I don't know. I kind of go both ways on like I like the rough tracks, but I also appreciate the glue tracks. So I don't really think there's a bad surface. Well, I take that back. A bad surface is where you can barely go around the track without crashing. That's kind of a bad surface to me. So that would be where when you can't battle the people on the track, you're just focusing on battling the track conditions. Then that's not really that would be the conditions I don't like. But until that, like if that's not a case, whether it's glued, rough, carpet, clay, um, I think they're all good surfaces. All right. Thanks for clearing that up. I was thinking an instance for the budget racer. I don't know. I mean, if you want to be on a budget, I would say just go with the radio that you can afford. Like all the radios are going to be pretty good these days. They're not really bad radios. There's just good radios, better radios, and then great radios. That's how I would say it. There isn't really any radios that just go like, "Oh, your car's going to run away all the time because of this or that." All the stuff these days are pretty solid. It just depends on how it feels in your hand. If you're picky like that, your price point, and what you want. So if you can kind of find the radio that fits all three of those, just go with that one. Don't really worry about if it's good enough or not. I would just do um, what feels best to you. All right. All right. So if you guys have any more questions, I got to get back to doing some wrenching and getting caught up with some of these builds. But if you guys have any further questions, just message me on Instagram. If you guys have any topics you guys want to go over, if you want to go over speed control settings, um, like a live on throttles linkage setup on your Nitro car, whatever you guys want to find out, we'll start putting those together on a Tuesday Tech Tips. Yeah, so I want to keep doing these. I'm gonna get better at doing them. Hopefully, use my time a little wiser this week and get things done. But yeah, we'll see you next Tuesday. If you like it, please subscribe. Share it with your friends. Share it on Facebook. Share it on Instagram. I want to just get it out there and help people as much as I can. Since you guys have supported Wally Builds since it was basically nothing, feel like I can give back and give videos and do all this to help you guys and get you guys up and running. They're on the right track, headed the right direction. So, all right, I'll see you guys later.